Brics, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and a few years ago South Africa, have invited 6 other countries to join the Brics grouping next year to create a geopolitical counterweight to the G7 and potentially a framework to reduce dependence on Western financial systems. The bloc decided to expand and invite the Argentine Republic, the Arab Republic of Egypt, the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates to become full members of the Brics, and the membership takes effect on the 1st of January 2024. We are joined in the studio by business expert Ratshosa to discuss the economic implications of the Brics expansion. Ratso, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so I look at this Brics thing. It's a conversation that I literally personally shun.
Yeah.
I don't find it very interesting, right? And particularly because it sounds like a what you call it, conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at it. When you look at the numbers, the Brics, when it comes to landmass, it's about 26.7% of the whole world.
Yeah.
Population, it's about 41 to 43% of the world population.
Yeah.
A very scary number, now increasing with Argentina, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and all that. But do you think this thing is really feasible?
I think it's a very difficult one, but it's been a long time in the making. So I think there's a lot of thought that has been put in, and I think it's something that can be done. It will just depend on the intentionality of the nations that are in there. But I think they have been affected for too long by the current system which is running. So I think it's something that is feasible in today's times.
But look at the 2 key countries on this, right?
Yeah.
Nothing personal. You're looking at China, and you're looking at Russia. Let's be realistic. Their systems themselves.
Yeah.
Their systems themselves, are they working for their people inside their countries before they can expand it? South Africa, I can't talk about it. There's no,
Yeah.
Yeah, but let's look at the 2 main countries.
So I think both these countries with the systems that they're using, sometimes it will be a bit unfair for us to judge, more especially countries like China, because if you go to China, they're using a system which is not adopted by a lot of countries, but it works perfectly for them.
Does it work? Do you know they've got more ghost cities in their own country?
Yeah.
They've got a lot of illegal immigrants who are Chinese, but because from one province to another, you don't have a work permit for that particular province, you are now being locked up. There are a lot of things. If you go to the north of China, Xinjiang province, where the Muslims are, there are a lot of allegations about human rights abuses.
But in truth, I mean, all those allegations are there in any other country. It just depends on how the media frames it for each country, right? But if we were to dig deeper into most of those countries, we'll say, okay, no, there are problems here, there are problems there. But when we look at China, I think we need to look at very few key indicators, right? They were intentional about their growth as an economy. We are seeing that growth, right? They were intentional about closing in on the powerful nations that were the Western countries, right? And we are seeing that dominance across the world. So I think, for a system, if we judge them against what they wanted to achieve, they are actually achieving most of that. But obviously, yes, there will always be issues there and there, people who don't like the system and people who prefer to move out of the system. But I think so far, of so many countries that are using a similar system, I think China is really giving the current leaders of the world a run for their money.
All right. Yeah. But are they worried? Because I don't think the world is that worried about China. Maybe about Russia, the world used to be worried.
Yeah.
But is Russia relevant today?
Yeah. So I think, when you look at, the politics side of all of these issues, I mean, right now we have an issue in Russia, right? There are wars that are happening in Russia.
Which apparently people who've been to Russia, they're saying Russia is just fine.
So the war has been taken out of Russia, right? So which is exactly what most developed countries do. They don't fight in their own country. They take the wars outside of their country. And when you look at the superpowers that currently are, who have been so eager to try and intervene when there are wars in Africa, when there are wars in other regions, and now now it's Russia and no one is going into Russia, you know, it gets you thinking, right? Are the superpowers who are supposed to be protecting the entire world like we've been made to believe, right? Are they really doing the work that they're supposed to be doing?
Sometimes you look at the impact. I mean, if one of these countries was to poke onto Russia, we do know what will happen because we don't know what Russia has. But let's look at the economic potential of this, right? Obviously, China has been on a fast-track movement towards growing itself as a country, towards creating platforms which were based on duplication of ideas and reselling them out. And the economy has moved well with regards to that, right? We've seen not a lot comes out of Russia except for Europe, which is primarily the gas and the oil industry, and formerly diamonds. Now they've left that seat for us, right? But economically speaking, right, these two countries, okay, let's take India into the picture now, because there's another one. When we bring in India into the picture, how well is India doing?
So India is one of the top countries when it comes to both innovation, tech,
especially technology,
and human resource, right? But it has been, we can say maybe it has been unfavored when it comes to you know, economic developments like funding to help the Indian people, medical issues and stuff like that.
But
right?
China never got those, but China went far.
Yes, China did. So I think for India, remember India was a colony for quite some time, right? And just like Africa, it has suffered the consequences of such, you know, for a very long time. But for unlike most African countries, India has a huge population size, right? So you can imagine if they suffered the same fate that most African countries suffered. So for them, it was in multiples, right? But right now they're coming out because the human resource is good. They have a lot of literate people in India. You know, they produce a lot of tech. Human resource is quite cheap in India, right? But now the question has been, how do you leverage those numbers, right? So I think China being in the picture is really helping countries like India to say, look, we did it like this, because China also is dealing with a big population, right? And if China says, no, we did it like this, they share the same skills, technological skills, human resource skills, development skills with India. India then maybe they might get to a point where we say, now India is becoming a superpower. But like you are saying, you know, the challenges are huge for Brics, because when you look at the G7, right? When you look at the G7 comprises of highly developed countries, right? So these are countries which are all up there. So when they speak the same language, right? But the problem is here, and I think that is why maybe these countries wanted to form Brics to say, look, we are developing, and every time we get instructions from the developed countries, but the instructions, they don't favor us, because we still have a problem here and here and here, and our people are not developed. Right now, the G7 is speaking day and night about climate. You know, about climate change. You know, do you think climate change it's really you know, top priority for African countries, like in reality, right? We talk about it, yes, because we want to comply, but is it top priority, right? We still have children who barely go for a day with one meal, right? And we are already talking about spending billions and billions on climate change.
But gauge the conversations and the tone of the African leaders now, coming out of the summit that happened in France, that the tone has changed. Shouldn't we focus on the Africa or the continent issues before we try to create something big? You look at India and China, there is no secret that they do have a border conflict that has been going on for many years. They haven't been able to get to a peaceful agreement about their border. Should we trust them to actually be willing to grow an economy when they still can solve small problems between themselves?
I think this is where the main problem is, because when you look at Africa, not just China and India, right? When you look at Africa itself, right, the greatest challenge that we have is that we can't resolve our own issues internally. That is the biggest problem that we have. The moment we start having conversations like that and we can resolve our own issues internally without somebody telling us that this is how you need to be resolving issues and getting favor from some and not all, right? Yeah. That is only when we can start to move forward. So right now, the issues that are between China and India, they need to be resolved. Yeah. Because if they don't get resolved, then nothing is going to move, right? But we want them to resolve the issues themselves, because if any other country, maybe from the G7 comes in, they'll be coming in to divide and rule, right? They will go with one and leave the other out. So I think it's upon us to really resolve this issue so that we can move forward.
All right. So now let's take Brazil. Brazil is one of the fastest growing economies now in the world, with a big export, especially in the agriculture sector. I do know a lot of beans and all these things are coming out of there. And the second biggest exporter of agriculture products is Argentina, now being invited. Let's look at South America. Is there a threat of South America being a part of this to the United States?
Well, before South America comes in, the Argentinas and all, it's already a threat. I mean, you mentioned the numbers earlier with the current group, right? Those are huge numbers, right?
46%.
Yeah, if they solve their problem, because I think that is the key issue. If they solve their differences in politics and how they have been doing things, right? It's already a huge threat to everyone, right? You look at what these countries are producing, right? You look at the special minerals that are being produced. You look at food and all of those things. These are things that are consumed by the G7 countries, but they are not produced there. They are produced here. It's just for these countries to say, look, this is how now we are going to be doing things. Because you need to remember, these things are not being done so that they can be competition between Brics and then G7. These things are done so that they can be, equal relations of trade between Brics and G7, right? They're just saying, you mentioned the conversations of African leaders now when it comes to this international forums, right? They're just saying, look, guys, we want to work with you, but we want to come as equals. We are tired of being given aid all the time, being told what to do all the time. Funding, we have to be given very, very expensive money. We can't afford it. We are not developing, right? You are saying we should be contributing towards climate change. We want to contribute the same way that you contribute, but only when there's a fair way of doing things. We are also accessing funding at a cheaper rate like you are, right? We want to have an opportunity to decide our trade terms and all of those things, right? That's all they're saying. So the idea is really not to compete, but I think the narrative that is being put out there, right, more especially from those countries who have been leading for a very long time, is to say, no, you need to be scared of these guys. They're too dangerous. They come together, are going to destroy everything, right? But they're not mentioning that if these guys come together and they refuse to work with them, these guys now will pose a real direct, challenge, right? But I don't think that is the intention of Brics. The intention is really to say, look, we are developing countries, and what we are seeing is that we are being left behind every day while other countries are moving forward. We just want to sit on the table with them.
All right. So we're looking at countries that obviously are popular with notorious things, right? We do know of the Russian mafias, we do know of the Brazilian mafias, the human trafficking that happens within Asia, and all those things, right? That on its own, it's a human security threat. Are we not seeing a buildup of mafias trying to get together to create something?
Well, I can't confirm that because those are just allegations.
Very true. And
I'm not sure if that's really what's happening. But when you look at so many things that are happening, I mean, the concerns that we have as a people, as people from developing countries, we have the same concerns, right? And our concerns are that, look, we have heard that this country, this is what they do, right? But ever since we started working with this country, our lives have been getting a bit better. Ever since we started doing business with China, now people can get materials cheaper than there are options, right? We're just saying, look, maybe the way that you frame this country or you painted this country.
It needs to be re-looked at.
Maybe it needs to be re-looked at.
All right, so we're looking at just at 15 years of Brics actually in existence, right? What have they done that we can ideally talk about and hold to say other countries should look forward to it? Because right now in Africa, there's only one country in there. Nigeria turned it down. They kind of shunned it a little bit. Now, Egypt is coming in, but Egypt is more on the MENA side of Africa. So what does this not eventually lead to the isolation of South Africa, which, remember, within Africa, the image of South Africa for Africans isn't so good?
I can't really pinpoint exactly what has been done to date, but I think because they if I'm right, I don't think they have an office yet, right? That's still making communication. But I think they have made some real developments in terms of convincing other countries. I don't think most of these countries will just be convinced if there was nothing
they need to see
that
something
can be
tangible
shown.
coming.
I think that there are some tangibles in there. That's why, I mean, if you look at the Saudi countries are, you know, we can't compare them with us. We can say that they're developing nations, but they're up there. You know, they've really done well. And I think that they're just saying, okay, look, but we hear what you are saying. We understand what you are driving at. Maybe we might not be clear on exactly what has been done, but I think, you know, when you see other middle-income countries or high-income countries now coming on board, I think there's something, you know, brewing there.
All right.
So I think maybe we can just get confidence from that to say, look, maybe the value proposition is starting to appease most countries now.
All right. So obviously, what we're seeing now is the number of countries that are coming in. You've got obviously Saudi Arabia rich in oil, the UAE rich in oil as well coming in, and 60% of gas moving within Europe comes out of Russia. Let's talk about oil and gas security or global energy security on this regard. Is the world secure if the gas industry now moves away from the G7 but goes directly into the Brics?
Yeah, but here's where the problem is, right? If that energy is being controlled by the G7, do they produce it? They don't.
They're controlling it by virtue of reselling. True.
They're controlling it, but they don't produce it. And if you look at the price of fuel, maybe in the States, it's so cheap that you can drive any car that you want to drive, right? It's so cheap, but they don't produce it. And then you look at us in Africa, we produce it, the Russians produce it, but the expenses of just fueling your car, they're too high, right? So the regulation is not fair when you look at it, right? That's all they're saying. They're just saying, look, guys, we need to sit at the table and decide these prices, these conditions.
From the thing that we work hard for.
Exactly.
All right, so let's talk about the currency briefly. We do know that earlier, a few years ago, so some years ago actually, a few decades ago, the US moved away from the gold standard and went to the dollar standard and pegged its own economy on the dollar. Now the Brics are saying, possibility of creating a currency that works for the Brics nations. Will that really, really, really bury the dollar?
I think the dollar might remain strong, but remember the dollar is backed up by commodities that mostly come from Africa.
And the Middle East.
And the Middle East, gold, oil, you know, and I think the Brics guys, if they are trying to play dirty, that is one of the areas that they're going to try to...
Politics is a very dirty economical game, eh? So we would never know. I think we'll have a bigger observation at this, obviously, as the summit wraps up and when the other summary of the summit comes out next year. Ratshosa, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
All right, and that marks the end of our conversation with Ratshosa. We're just discussing a little bit on the Brics and the potentials that are coming out of there. Thank you for watching. After this, Kidikang.